Of a three-part series on implementing integrated education and training, or IET, sponsored by World Education in an effort to share effective and emerging models in the field. My name is Ellen Hewitt, and I am one of the facilitators of today's session. Today's webinar is about offering IET for English language learners, especially those with limited education who may not aim for a post-secondary credential but need a career path. Our presenters will describe IET in the sectors of culinary arts, building maintenance, and entrepreneurship. I'm really grateful to each of our colleagues for their enthusiastic willingness to share their knowledge and lessons with us today. Also, I extend a warm thank you to each of you for joining us. Your engagement is really appreciated. Thank you. So before we do introductions, let me turn this over to Ben Bruno to make sure you know how to participate in this webinar platform. Ben?
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, everyone. I'd just like to go over some basics about WebEx in case you haven't used it before or if you need a refresher. So today, only the panelists will be able to communicate via audio, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you and hear your questions and comments. So we would like you to use the chat box for discussion. The chat box should appear on the right side of your screen. If you don't see it, you can go to the top right area and click on the chat icon, and that button up there will toggle it on and off. That will toggle the whole window on and off. So if you find it distracting, you can toggle it off. And if you don't see it and you want to use it, you can click that button and it will bring it back up. And then when you send your chats, we want to make sure that you follow these instructions on the bottom of the current slide. There is a pull-down window next to where it says Send To, and that might default to my name, Ben Bruno. I'm the tech host for this webinar. And you can send me tech questions if you have them, but otherwise we'd like you to send chats to all participants. And it's not all attendees. That sounds similar, but that's a different thing. So make sure you send to all participants, and then we can see all of your questions. Everyone can see all of your questions and chats. If you at any point lose your audio connection, you can just go to Communicate along the top and click Audio Broadcast, and that will bring the audio broadcast back up. If you have problems with the audio dropping out a lot, what you can do is request an audio line to listen to over your phone, and that's the way you can do that is click the phone with a question mark button, and that should be also under the Communicate menu, or a phone with question mark button at the bottom of the participant list, which is on the right of your screen. And this is being recorded. We will send out the recording to you afterwards, so don't feel like you have to take too copious notes. I think that's it for me. Thank you very much, Ellen.
Oh, thanks, Ben. And I also noticed as you were talking that there is someone in the chat box who's having a hard time with her audio.
Yep, thanks, Ellen.
You're welcome. So many programs have been offering IET for a long time, but as you know, IET is getting renewed attention now that it is a key component of WIOA-funded adult education. And there have been many excellent presentations, I'm sure many of you have been a part of them or listened to them, on the nuts and bolts of the new regulations that guide IET under WIOA. And we're not going to replicate that. Rather, we're focusing on program-level implementation in this series, and we're interested in pulling together examples, and we are pulling together examples from 9 states and touch on a wide range of industry sectors. So the series is organized around 3 topics that we've heard a lot of questions about in our own work throughout the country. So the first webinar was about IET in rural settings, and that is where the population is dispersed and it may be challenging to fill a cohort for the particular career pathway that is open, or other challenges that may be unique to rural areas. If you missed it, no worries, you can still listen to it. The recording is available at the NCTN website, and the address is www.collegetransition.org. So the second webinar, IET within ESL Programs, has just started. You're in it. The third webinar is on January 26th, and it will be about the ways programs have contextualized the IBEST model to fit the local resources and systems that they work within. And we'll have colleagues from New York, Kansas, and Mississippi to share their lessons and their wisdom. And finally, several, if not most, of the programs presenting in the series pre-exist WIOA. So if they don't currently meet the letter of WIOA, they are at least well on their way. And as WIOA gets interpreted by the states, these experienced programs can really help us all better understand through their promising practices and help us avoid missteps. So just as you have a face to know who the facilitators are, I'm Ellen Hewitt, and I'm Director of the National College Transition Network. And I am now going to be turning the mic over to Andy Nash, Director of NALRC. Andy?
Thank you, Ellen, and hello to friends and colleagues. We are fortunate today to have presenters from 3 adult education programs that are based in diverse communities and that offer services in 4 different career paths. Although they're all community-based programs, you can expect to see variety in how they determined the programming that would make the most sense in their communities, how they identified and collaborated with partners, how they designed and adapted the features of their programs, and how they pieced together funding. The way we're organizing the webinar is that after a couple of framing slides from me, we'll hear from the 3 programs with a couple of questions taken in between presentations, and then when they're finished, open it up to a fuller Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat box as you have them. And since we're a large group today, it's unlikely we'll get through all of them, but the presenters have graciously offered to provide written responses to the questions that we don't get to. And those will go out to you along with a link to the recording and a list of resources that are noted in the webinar. But before we meet our presenters, I want to frame this with the definition that the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, set out for integrated education and training programs. So here is the definition, which you've probably seen before. IET is a service approach that provides adult education and literacy activities concurrently and contextually with workforce preparation activities and workforce training for a specific occupation or occupational cluster for the purpose of educational and career advancement. So the aim of the model is for adults to receive the kind of integrated services that can most effectively help them advance in a high-demand occupation. And key to the model are these 3 components. So adult education and literacy, which is your basic skills and English language acquisition. General workforce preparation, and that's such as digital literacy, problem solving, teamwork, career exploration, those general transferable work readiness skills. And then occupation-specific workforce training that prepares adults with credentials that can advance them along a career pathway. And these 3 components need to be offered concurrently rather than sequentially. In ESL programs, IET services are most likely offered as part of a more comprehensive integrated English literacy and civics education program, or IELCE. But today we're focusing on the workforce IET component and how those services are designed for the particular needs of immigrant communities. So the opportunities of IET that stand out for us are, first, the opportunity to build effective partnerships. The required integration of education and training fosters partnerships across agencies and collaboration among providers in order to figure out how to offer well-coordinated, connected services, and that's valuable. IET also offers the opportunity of accelerated learning and therefore quicker access to jobs along a career pathway. And this is facilitated by the intensity of services that's created when you bundle services or you co-enroll students in education and training so that they move ahead more quickly. And they very much appreciate that. And then there's a larger opportunity for the field through the focus on contextualized instruction. IET is promoting high-quality, evidence-based instructional practices by nudging the field toward using contextualized materials and building skills in context. And hopefully, teachers will transfer those practices into the more general adult education classroom. Now, of course, there are related challenges to many of these opportunities, such as that more intensive services are costly, or that some partnerships will limit the access to services for adults without work authorization. And that's why we need to hear from the pioneers, the programs that have been working to figure out how to balance these opportunities and these challenges. So let me introduce our presenters. First, we have Tyler McCaffrey-Pimentel, who has been the Adult Services Director at Genesis Center in Providence, Rhode Island for 4 years. During that time, she's directed their WIOA transition, as well as their shift to a bridge IET model that integrates adult ed, vocational training, and support services. Below Tyler is Maureen Moreira, the Program Coordinator and Basic Skills Instructor for the Asian American Civic Association's Building Maintenance Work Training Program in Boston, Massachusetts. She integrates a 6-month hands-on training in carpentry, electricity, plumbing, appliance repair, and energy efficiency practices with basic skills contextualized to the maintenance industry. And prior to this role, Maureen taught ESOL and worked in the trades. On the right, we have 2 presenters from Central Texas. After 28 years developing and directing adult literacy programs, John Engel recently retired, as in last week, as the Adult Education Director of Community Action of Central Texas. He's a longtime advocate of educationally disadvantaged adults and their families, and has been a leader in educational advocacy, taking a key role in educating the Texas legislature about the need for increased state investment in adult education and the need for a career pathway system in the state. Also from Community Action is Francesca Ramirez, who has been their career counselor since 2009. In 2010, she developed their college prep program, which continues today. And in addition to her work at Community Action, Francesca also runs her own part-time transportation business. So we're going to start by getting a brief introduction to each program from the presenters so that you get a general sense of the context within which each program developed, and then we'll go back into greater detail for each one. So we'll start with Tyla from Genesis Center in Rhode Island.
Hi, thanks, Andy. Genesis Center provides adult education, primarily English for speakers of other languages, and job training to around 700 adults every year. We developed our job training programs years ago because we couldn't find many good training resources for the community that we serve. There are existing training programs in Rhode Island in IT, advanced manufacturing, and other fields, but many of our students lack the English proficiency or the credentials that they need to qualify for those programs. So what we did is develop training programs that match the needs of employers with the strengths and abilities of our learners. We have offered job training in culinary arts and healthcare for years now. These are 2 of our state's 3 largest industries. Our vocational instructors have always integrated basic skills and work readiness instruction into their classes to support learners with limited English proficiency. But in the last 2 years, we've increased the basic skills instruction and work readiness preparation in our programs to align better with WIOA.
Okay, thank you. So that's Genesis Center. Now, Maureen will tell us about building maintenance at AACA. Maureen, you might be muted.
I was muted, thank you. Yeah, hi. At ACCA, our clients come from over 80 countries around the world, including the United States. Many of them come here with great technical backgrounds from their home country where they worked in manufacturing or engineering. They worked on production lines or manufacturing lines as machinists or HVAC technicians, electrical engineers, and other related professionals in their home country. When they arrive here in the U.S., a lot of them find it difficult to get a job using that skill set without having any credentials from the U.S. So many of them are working 2 or 3 part-time jobs with no benefits, no opportunities for career advancement or career growth, and many of them are at a minimum wage. Boston is a city of tourism, and we have a lot of hotels here. It's also a city of higher education with a lot of universities, and a city of healthcare with a lot of hospitals. These 3 industries alone provide ample opportunity for sustainable jobs and facilities maintenance. This is an industry where many of our students are able to put their background and their interests to work. Our current maintenance training program grew out of a series of exploratory seminars in the various construction trades, along with assistance in helping clients find jobs in those fields. This has also been proven to be a very adaptable program for us, providing the basic hard skills that can be updated and upgraded to fit a current green market.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll get an introduction, a brief introduction to a program in a very different context in Central Texas. I think John is doing the intro, right?
Correct. Good afternoon. So Community Action Inc. Central Texas runs an adult education program that serves the 9 county areas surrounding Austin, Texas. So it's called the Rural Capital Area Workforce. So we have the suburban and rural counties surrounding one of the booming economies and cities in this country. Austin is a magnet for all kinds of people seeking work, including many immigrants. And many of the immigrants live in the counties that we serve and strike into Austin for work. So one fact of the matter here in Texas is we're fast becoming a minority-majority state. Our public school system is already majority-minority, and that's primarily driven by Latino population growth, and a big portion of that is immigrant families. And we have thousands of families that we serve who are of mixed legal status. That is, the kids often are born here in this country, they're citizens, they're our future workforce, and often the parents or one of the parents is not documented and is unable to work legally in this country. We felt just a really strong moral and demographic imperative to try to develop an IET that was within the context and the letter of the law that could be open to both immigrants who are legal to work and those who are not. And we saw that the entrepreneurial training was an allowable IET option under WIOA. We petitioned, we asked the Texas Workforce Commission if we might be able to do a pilot of an entrepreneurial training program just as a demonstration for the state to learn from and also to try to meet the needs of our students. And it has been extremely popular, and we stress from the word go that although you may not be able to legally work in this country, there's absolutely no law on the books that says you can't start your own business as long as you do it in a proper and legal manner, and that's the big purpose of the class.
Great.
That's it for now.
Well, we appreciate that you are exploring that pathway. That's a huge contribution, even beyond Texas, so thank you. So these are clearly different contexts that you just saw in terms of who the immigrants are and the skills and experiences they bring, as well as the employment environment of that particular community. So what we're going to do is go back now to hear in greater depth from each of the presenters about how they designed their programs within their context. And so we'll go back to start again with Tyla.
Thank you. Genesis Center provides, I'm starting on my first section, sorry about that. So at Genesis Center, we serve a very diverse, mainly immigrant population. More than 70% of our participants are Latino, and certainly more than 70% are women. We recruit training participants from our ESL classes, friends and families of our graduates, and other low-income, unemployed, or underemployed members of our community. Our training participants are documented immigrants because in order for them to enter employment with one of our partners, they need documentation that allows them to work in the U.S. Our goal is to help our learners get their foot in the door to an industry where they can start a good career. We know that there is We offer job training in healthcare for a number of reasons. First of all, you can see on the webinar graphic that it's Rhode Island's largest sector, and it's really important that when a participant finishes training, there are jobs available to them. We found that employers who have a high demand in certain positions are more willing to work closely with us and provide internship and employment opportunities because they know that we can help their business. Our state also has an aging Latino population, so there is need for bilingual, culturally sensitive workers. It's a good field for our learners to get into because many of them have experience caring for others, so it is a career pathway where our facilitators can help participants build on their existing skills and experiences. Healthcare offers the benefits of a career ladder where participants can start working at the lower rungs, continue their education, and work their way up. The second industry that we focus on is culinary arts. Providence is known for our restaurants and our food scene. Like healthcare, cooking and food preparation is a talent where our program participants have the personal experience that makes it easier for them to learn the technical skills. We know that there is a demand for entry-level workers in these fields in part because of the feedback from our employer partners. These partnerships typically start with trying out an intern at a work site and then building the relationship from there. We've developed employer partnerships in every way imaginable. Sometimes we're fortunate to have a board member or a staff member with an employer contact who can make the initial connection. More frequently, it happens when a staff member is at, say, a healthcare-related meeting or conference and makes a connection with someone who works in the healthcare field. Last year, we actually found ourselves in a bind when we had more medical assistants in our class than our partner could accommodate. So we made cold calls to local medical offices to ask if they'd be willing to host interns, and we made several new partnerships that way. It can be difficult to find the right person to talk with, and they're not always interested in partnering, but we often have luck if we are able to connect with the HR department or an office manager. Many of our employed participants are hired at their internship site, so these relationships have been really important to our program. Here is a graphic that depicts our overall program design. We start with a thorough intake process where applicants are assessed and interviewed by our staff. If an applicant meets the criteria for employment in the field and has supports in place to complete the training, they'll be accepted and attend orientation. And at orientation, they complete activities with their vocational instructor, ABE, ASE instructor, financial coach, and job coach. The classroom component of the training comes next, where the participants complete vocational training supported by basic skills instruction and work readiness. If they successfully complete the classroom portion, then we arrange for an internship placement for each student with an employer partner. When they complete their internship, they've completed the program, and we continue to work with them to find employment. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the specifics of two of our programs. Our Homemaker and Health Services program is an 11-week full-time entry-level training program that prepares participants for employment as a homemaker or in food services or environmental services, otherwise known as housekeeping, in an institutional healthcare setting. Participants are accepted with a 208 or higher on the CASAS reading assessment, and we do not require a high school credential for the class. The class participates in 8 weeks of classroom training where they learn about infection control, professionalism, and financial literacy. Because the class is geared toward adults with learning difficulties and lower literacy skills, our instructor also spends a good amount of time building our participants' confidence and working on goal setting for continued education. During the training, learners earn certificates in first aid and CPR, as well as the basic ServSafe food handler certificate, and they finish after completing a 3-week internship with a local healthcare provider. Our culinary arts program, on the other hand, is a 13-week full-time training that prepares participants to enter the food industry. Applicants are accepted with a 221 CASAS score or higher and do not require a high school credential. The curriculum is intensive, and the class is taught by a professional chef. It's very hands-on, with participants preparing daily meals for our adult students to buy and for the kids in our child care center. And they often have the opportunity to prepare food for events for Genesis Center or other local organizations. At the end of the classroom training, participants test for the ServSafe Food Safety Manager certificate and complete an internship at a local restaurant. The passage of WIOA and other local workforce initiatives prompted us to ramp up the basic skills support that's integrated into our programs. Last year, we started setting aside blocks of class time for a basic education instructor to deliver contextualized instruction to the trainees of each of our programs. There is daily common planning time available to our teachers when the vocational and the basic skills instructors discuss the curriculum and the needs of the current class. Then the basic skills instructor has a scheduled time each week when she visits the vocational class to provide targeted instruction, particularly around industry-specific vocabulary development, foundational skills required to perform the job tasks, and development of metacognitive skills. She also takes advantage of this time to talk with the class about what they're studying and where they feel they need help. Workforce preparation is also integrated throughout the program by the vocational instructor, but we bring in an employment coach as well who works directly with our workforce participants during class time and push-in workshops. She primarily helps them develop resumes and prepare for interviews. Moving to a more robust IET model has had good impacts on our outcomes. They've remained strong in employment and EFL completions. Areas where we have seen the most improvement are in program retention and starting wages. Starting wages for our healthcare graduates increased significantly in 2015 when we developed a relationship with a local hospital group. We were fortunate when a city employee in Providence's Community Development Office saw the potential for a collaboration between our center and the hospital group. She facilitated some meetings, and as a result of that partnership, our retention and employment rates have improved in our healthcare programs. I expect that the improved outcomes are a result of the expanded staff resources that our IET model makes available to our participants, including our basic educator and employment coach. Learners form relationships with all of their instructors, and information is reinforced by multiple members of our team, so perhaps the trainees are feeling more supported. We follow up with graduates every other month for a year following graduation to track outcomes, prevent backsliding, and provide any support that may be necessary. Our program's retention rates approach 90% and employment rates exceed 80%. This doesn't take into consideration the graduates who enrolled in a higher level training or are in the process of preparing for the GED. And moving forward, we're looking at expanding our IET program offerings. Currently in the works, we have a contextualized CNA training opportunity, the possibility of offering an ESL class for English language learners who want to prepare for employment in the healthcare field, and a developing relationship with healthcare apprenticeship programs.
Wow, those are very impressive outcomes that you're reporting.
Thank you.
Before I ask Ellen, who's been watching the chat box, about a question that somebody might have right at this point for you, I want to just ask a clarifying question, because my understanding is that the chef doing the technical training for the culinary arts program is employed by the Genesis Center as an approved training provider. So you're not, in that case, partnering with a different agency to get your technical expertise. Can you describe that a little bit more? Because most programs are partnering across agencies.
Yes, we do bring in outside specialists for our healthcare-related certificates, for instance, for our Alzheimer's training, first aid, CPR. But it makes sense for us to have a chef instructor on staff because we have the need for daily meals for the children in our early learning center. So he really serves two purposes. He coordinates the meals for the children, and he provides instruction to his group of adult learners. The benefits of having our vocational instructor on staff is that we can make the program more cohesive. It's all in one place. We don't have to worry about matching our schedule with the partners. We have control over the quality of the program. And we actually have something in the works right now. We're working with another healthcare training providers to discuss possibilities around sharing the cost of a full-time nurse instructor to support our healthcare training. So we'll see what comes of those conversations.
That's an interesting aspect of your model, I'll have to say. Yeah. Okay, so let me ask Ellen if there's a question she wants to pluck from the chat box at this point.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions, and like Ben mentioned earlier and Andy mentioned, we'll make sure that these are responded to in written form if it's not asked now. But one of the questions has to do with your funding and asking, is this program solely funded by adult education funds, or are there other funds being used?
We do have funds coming in from other sources as well. from our local workforce boards, and we have some smaller foundation grants as well that support them, and a National Social Innovation Fund grant.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to talk about funding more at the end as well. So let me thank you so much, Tyler. Let me pass this along now, bring in Maureen to talk about AACA.
Hi, thank you. So I thought we were going to move on to the next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry.
That's okay. So we're training people for entry-level positions as hotel engineers, property maintenance technicians, and more recently our younger clients are being accepted into some of the construction trades unions. In 2002, we partnered with Boston Public Schools Adult Education to provide basic training in facilities maintenance. Those classes are taught at a vocational technical high school in the afternoon and the evening hours. Many of the teachers that work in the school are licensed professionals themselves in their own area, such as licensed electricians, licensed plumbers, licensed general contractors. In 2008, funders were looking to support green programs, and buildings were being upgraded to meet new energy-saving demands. So at that time, we partnered with a green contractor. We modified the curriculum that we were using, and we added a class on energy efficient standards and measures. So we updated the electricity, we updated the plumbing, but then we also added a class as well. We have a job developer that works with the hotels and property management companies, and she matches the students with internships and jobs. She also works with over 30 employer partners that we have in the industry. Initially, we had a small core of hotel and property management companies as an advisory board that we contacted to review curriculum and to sign on as partners so that we could get the memorandum of agreements that were needed to get funding from the program. But then that grew into taking interns, and now purely by word of mouth, we're over 30 employer partners. I mean, how it generally works is one human resource recruiter is friends with another recruiter, and they want to know where they're getting their candidates. They take an intern, they become a partner. And also our graduates have been one of our best proponents for recruiting new employer partners. One gets a job at a hotel that we're not familiar with, and that hotel calls us to find out more about BEAMS students in the BEAMS program, and then they take interns and they become partners. The employer partners also provide input on curriculum and conduct mock interviews for our students. Like I said earlier, candidates come from over 80 countries around the world, including the United States. They range in education level from high school to college. Some have advanced technical backgrounds, while others have handyman or mechanical skills. Most maintenance jobs require a minimum of a high school education or equivalent and a driver's license, and in some cases, some jobs require a car. The selection process includes testing and an interview to determine a student's readiness for the program. We have weekly testing and information sessions where we test English reading comprehension and math skills and require a writing sample. We also interview them and we look at the skills that they have from their education and work experience. Qualified candidates work with an intake specialist or case manager here to meet the Career Center criteria and to follow up on any barriers that they may have to completing the program and finding employment. Those types of barriers are immediate need for income, adjusting work schedules, child care arrangements, lack of transportation, or in some cases, open cases in the criminal justice system that we try to resolve before looking for employment. We designed the program to have 2.5 cohorts a year with 16 students in a cohort, and this cap is set by Boston Public Schools for safety. Students start by getting an industry-recognized certificate for 10 hours of occupational safety and health administration training, which is OSHA 10, and that's taught in the first week before they start classes in the shop. Then they go into the shop and they have 17 weeks of integrated education and training. During this time, they get 20 hours a week of hands-on training in carpentry, electricity, plumbing, appliance repair, along with contextualized English and math classes. Because math has been a barrier for some students in the past, we recently received funding from the state to run a 4-week remedial math class to prepare students for the math topics that get covered in the training program. The basic skills instructor spends about an hour each day in the shop working with the vocational instructor and the students in identifying vocabulary and math skills that need to be reinforced in the basic skills classes. A lot of technical vocabulary is learned by both non-native and native speakers in the class together, but we have determined a need to have a separate ESL class that can meet a couple of times a week. There's also a job readiness class that's held once a week, and in that class students work on resumes, interviewing, researching jobs and companies, filling out online applications. And finally, we have site visits to some of our employer partners so that students can see how the high-efficiency systems operate. We also have a 5-week internship at the end of the classes with a minimum of 20 hours a week that enables students to get on-the-job experience and for employers to meet good job candidates. Students receive their certificate after completing the internship, and many internships lead directly to a job. Employer partners now contact our job developer directly when a position becomes available and ask for interns. This has been a very successful program for us, for our clients, and in many ways for our employers and partners as well. Many employers no longer post jobs. Many of our employer partners have signed on with us because of a successful Beams graduate they've hired. Completion rates and job placement has been and continues to be high. In the last 2 fiscal years, over 90% of participants completed the training. In FY15, 94% were placed in jobs, and in FY16, 74% so far have been placed. And we anticipate that number to go up, as students are still job searching. The jobs that students are getting are training-related jobs with benefits at an average wage between $15 and $16 an hour. For some of our clients, this almost doubles their pay rate if they were working at minimum wage before they entered the program. After graduates are placed, they continue to work with a retention specialist who helps them onboard to their new job and works with both graduates and employers to seek opportunities for growth and development. Some graduates have attained additional certifications in education and HVAC and EPA regulations, and some have been paid by their company to take restoration classes. We're currently working on bringing our graduates back to ACCA to provide them with some of these certifications with study groups through the retention workshops. The U.S. has outsourced many of its manufacturing jobs to other countries, and our clients are coming to the U.S. with skills they've acquired through manufacturing and production in these other countries. And these really are the very skills that are being sought by the building and facilities maintenance industries. One of the successes, I think, of this program has been recognizing that our clients have multiple skills and interests, and though some of them come with a particular specialization, they're looking forward to adding to their skill set and learning new things. Because this program can offer hard skills training in multiple areas, not just carpentry, not just electricity or HVAC, as many other technical schools do. It meets the multi-skill demands of an industry where there's plenty of opportunity and little competition and training. It's also an industry that's been changing demands as energy costs are anticipated to soar in the future. And these changes have created a newer model of an industry that cannot get outsourced easily. Our clients, as well as the career centers and other funders, want training that will give them stability in the job market. With these changes, students are facing advances in technology that many of them are not prepared for. Giving students the computer literacy and mobile device skills is currently one of our greatest challenges, and it's an area that we want to develop more fully in the future. In closing, I'd really like to say that much of the success of this program, I think, is attributed to our students. They spread the word about the program. Most people come to us through word of mouth. They are motivated to pick up the new skills that are required to enter the job market, and they excel in their jobs to the point of employers contacting us to get more people like them. In essence, they bring us the clients, they bring us the employers, and they're the ones that really keep the program running. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. I have a question, again, before I turn it over to Ellen. Can you talk about how you decide to require a high school credential for entry to the program? And might that be a high school credential from another country, or does it have to be the U.S. credential?
Oh, we do, yeah. No, it can be a high school credential from another country. It's really the sector that requires high school education as their minimum requirement. And we have had some students, you know, from countries where it's been very hard to get their high school diploma. And, you know, through working with the employer partner, you know, we've been able to get them that job even without that actual paper credential. But for the most part, it's a requirement for them even to enter the program because most of our employers want that.
It does seem like one of the pieces of work that may happen through these IET programs is that there's going to be an element of educating employers about whether or not such a credential is actually essential for doing that job, and educators can start playing that role by just starting to have those conversations. So that's interesting. Okay, Ellen?
Yeah, I mean, I also want to say that I see there's several questions around funding, but we will make sure that that's a key part to our question and answer time towards the end of our webinar. So one of the questions that is specific to you, Maureen, is how do you identify employer partners and who is responsible for that?
Our job developer is, I guess originally we identified employer partners, you know, just sending out a letter of appeal, making phone calls to the hotels and facilities and the facilities in the city to sign on so that we could begin the program. And this was a long time ago, even before I started working here. But our job developer currently, you know, she meets with employer partners, and really, most of our employer partners today come through the employer partners that we already had. That's the biggest way that it happens. You know, somebody's working, and you know, somebody else wants to know, how did you get this candidate? And they'll tell them there's a program, and then they call us. We do very little calling these days for employer partners. They call us.
Because you got the ball rolling so well, it sounds like.
Yeah, and this program has been around since 2002, and you know, the certificate is on a lot of people's resumes now, and I think it's, you know, it's becoming an employer-recognized certificate. You know, when they see a resume, they have an understanding of what kind of training that these people have gone through, and they kind of feel pretty confident in hiring these people.
Well, thanks, Maureen. There'll be some of the other questions that we'll pose towards the end. And Andy?
Okay, so let's continue on with our third presentation from Central Texas, John and Francesca. John, you're muted. If both of you are muted.
There I am. Sorry. I'm going to start this presentation off and then pass on to Francesca. The best way to think about our entrepreneurship class or our business basics class for ESL students is to think of it as an academy that students who are currently enrolled in our existing ESL and EL civics class elect to take on in addition to taking their regular ESL, EL civics classes. So the business basics class is designed for ESL students functioning at the low intermediate NRS 4 level or above. However, many students who are functioning at a lower level want to take the course, and we've experimented with that. And now we're having a lot of requests from the students on the ABE and GED side of the house. But right now, it's only for people who are enrolled in our ESL classes. And so in terms of WIOA and the Workforce Innovation Act, the business basics class is offered concurrently with our ESL and EL civics classes. And in the ESL, EL civics classes, they get all of their ESL instructions, all of their civics curriculum, and they get a lot of digital literacy and workforce prep activities in their regular classes. And so the integration is sort of informal. The thing that seems to translate the most over to the entrepreneurship class, of course, is the English skills and whatnot, but the digital literacy skills become very important. That's kind of how the concurrency and the integration works. So in developing the class content, when we were thinking about preparing this thing at the start, we thought it would be very important for people who have completed the class to have a tool with which to continue to start their own business. And in this case, the tool that we chose was the Google Chromebook, because you know, you can do anything. If you have a good Wi-Fi connection, you can do anything with a Google Chromebook that you could do with any other computer, and they only cost about $250. So we made the choice to invest in Chromebooks. So when students enroll in the class, they come to the first class, they sign attendance contracts, they're told that at the second class, they're actually given their Chromebook, and they're told if they don't miss more than one class and they could complete the requirements of the class, they will be able to keep the Chromebook in order to have it as a tool to make further progress on starting their own business. So that's been a nice little incentive that I think has worked. As I said earlier, the class has been really, really popular. We just started a new one. We had 30 people sign up right away. And so far, the business areas that the students are developing business plans for and learning about and starting, actually, many of them are in the food industry. Many people are interested in starting restaurants, and particularly food trucks. The food truck scene in Austin is robust, to say the least. There's just a food truck on every corner and every food type you can imagine. So that's very popular. And then with the Hispanic tradition of quinceañeras and all of that, and it's a large family thing, you know, party rental, the party decor, all that stuff is a whole branch where people have gone into. And then, of course, as many of you know, many immigrants, particularly here in Texas, where the documentation issue is a big one, you know, they're cleaning houses or working construction or doing landscaping already, and they're doing it for someone else, or you know, and so we equip them with the tools to start their own business in a stand-up and legal manner, so that you know, they can be their own boss, so to speak, or the customers can be their boss, and they can no longer have to you know, have some contractor telling them what to do. We also had one gentleman who is developing a digital app that he intends to market. So things are all over the place. And I'm going to turn it over to Francesca now, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. In regards to our partnerships and collaborations, we are fortunate enough to collaborate with some local knowledgeable partners in and around the Austin, Texas area, and each semester seems to bring a new partnership. One of the first partners we began collaborating with was the nonprofit Service Corps for Retired Executives. They're also known as Cohort. They come in once during the 9 weeks for about an hour to discuss some simple tips and strategies on how the students can market their business. SCORE also connected us with Legal Aid Services of Austin, who we now connect with directly, and one of their lawyers visits our classroom sometime during the 9 weeks for about an hour to an hour and a half, and provides the students with information on how to formalize their business structure, whether it be a sole proprietorship or a limited liability company. The lawyer also shows them how to find out if their business name is already taken and how to register their name with the Secretary of State's office. A conversation was also had regarding drawing up contracts for customers and between business owners. An employee from the local Chamber of Commerce visits during our last class and brings alongside one or two business owners to talk with the class about how they first got started with their own businesses, lessons they learned along the way, and what the business owners wish they knew before they started their business. And they also emphasize the students not to quit their primary source of income anytime soon. Two representatives from Randolph-Brooks.
Excuse me for a second,
yes.
Francesca. Because I'm busy here looking at the chat box for questions, there are some comments that are there about your sound is a bit muffled, and so they ask if there's a way for you to speak maybe closer to the phone so that they can hear you better, because what you're saying is so important. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Hopefully this is better now. Sorry.
I think that is
two representatives. Okay, thanks. Two representatives from Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union, one from the personal side of banking and the other from the business side, spend an entire 3-hour class discussing the difference between a credit union versus a bank, and then their opportunities for small business lending and how to build upon and improve their credit scores, and then emphasis is placed on the separation of personal and business banking accounts. Lift Fund, a nonprofit organization based out of San Antonio with local branches in surrounding areas, including Austin, they come in and make an hour to an hour and a half presentation on low interest loans available for documented and undocumented small business owners. With this cohort, we started having a CPA come in to talk for an hour about tax obligations, such as differences between federal and quarterly taxes and deductions they can use for their business. And as far as the curriculum goes, we do begin week 1 talking about myths and realities and what it means to be an entrepreneur. Ideas that if they will have a boss, when they start their business and who will that be? What kind of hours will they be working? And sometimes as a business owner, they'll have to work on projects or tasks that they don't find fun to do. In regards to finances and budgets, we do spend an entire 3-hour session and sometimes an hour into the next week's session discussing how important it is to start saving now for their business, even if they don't think they'll start it for another 6 months or a year. We talk about the importance of how they manage their personal finance and how that'll carry over to their business finances. We have a discussion on everyday expenses, from buying breakfast tacos or coffee every day, a few times a week, and what that adds up and looks like for a month. And then for 1 year, if they continue to keep spending the way they currently are. For homework, they're assigned the task of tracking expenses they spend money on for 7 days. And also the in-class assignment and homework have always been pretty eye-opening activities for the students. We spend 2 class sessions regarding the business plan basics. We discuss what a business plan is, its sections, why the students will need one to start their business. Students learn what a mission statement and objectives are and the importance to creating those. Students do online research of other businesses, and then they present their findings to their peers in class. The practice with digital tools involves the Chromebook and teaching them how to download appropriate apps and how to use Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. Students create Gmail accounts that they'll specifically use for their business. Each week, students practice on the Chromebook by sending the instructors at least 2 emails, and they do send thank you emails to the presenters after they come to class. Again, the marketing and banking weeks are when the presenters from Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union and school come in. And then the last week of class is devoted to having the chamber come in. The students present their business plan from Google Slides. We award them programs for each and every and how it will follow up. These pictures represent one of the students from the summer cohort whose husband has been running a drywall company for the last 5 to 6 years and has had several employees working for him. She wanted to take the class to learn how to legalize the business and increase profit, and she hopes to work the administrative side of the business. So the slides you see here are her presenting her mission statement, objectives, and market research on new homes being built in East County over a 6-year time frame from 2009 to 2014. Our next steps include this semester, another teacher and I recently went through a series of small business workshops offered by the City of Austin's Economic Development Program in collaboration with the University of Texas, the Center for Professional Development, and we both received a certificate in business success skills last month. And with the information we gained through those workshops, we're working on developing a 5 to 6 week business basics part 2 class that will focus on having the students who went through part 1 develop a basic website, how to market their business on social media outlets, and have an introductory class on QuickBooks. We're also working with SCORE and local businesses to help students pair up with mentors in their industry. And I'm currently in the process now of developing a way for alumni to stay in touch so we can offer ongoing support, whether that be a Facebook page or quarterly get-togethers for breakfast or dinner.
And finally, our current challenge is related to a regulation that the Texas Workforce Commission has come out with, saying that all IET programs funded by WIOA funds in Texas must result in a recognized post-secondary credential, or otherwise documented how the person went on to a career path. And we're not sure what a recognized post-secondary credential is exactly, and we're looking for a partner who might be able to help us with such a credential. So if there's anybody out there in the audience that's had any ideas about attaching a recognized post-secondary credential to an entrepreneurial training program, please get in touch with us. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Sorry for the audio difficulties, but John, you were coming through clear. And I think that challenge of post-secondary credential in a pathway that is new and responsive to the community is going to be just an ongoing challenge around IET in general. I mean, I think what's wonderful about offering entrepreneurship is that if you're in a community that only has 2 or 3 career pathway options, if you're a person who doesn't want one of those particular careers, then what are you left with? I mean, at least you're trying to create possibilities in areas that people might be able to have more creative outlets through. So I know that there have come in a lot of questions about funding, and I know Tyler responded in the beginning a little bit about funding, but I wonder if before we move toward the chat box questions, if you could say how your program is funded, and actually if Maureen, you could as well, and Tyler, if you have anything else to say about that. People are concerned about how to fund this kind of intensive service delivery, whether you're doing it just with your Title II adult education funds or what other sources you're tapping into and how you did that. So could we start with you, John?
Sure. Community Action Adult Education Program is pretty much 100% WIOA funded. We have some other money, but it's primarily dedicated to helping the parents of Head Start children with employability and literacy and such. So we fund this program entirely out of our adult education grant, and we try to, in fact, we fund it all out of what is called the IELCE portion of that grant. I don't know how they do it in other states, but they break our money up, and our old EL Civics
that's true
funds,
everywhere.
Well, they were very much finished, and they were turned into IELCE funds. And the challenge is, in order to spend the IELCE dollars in a way that the Texas Workforce Commission considers to be legal, is you have to spend that money on students, only students who are enrolled in an entrepreneurial training class, an ESL class, all the components that we've talked about: workforce prep, digital literacy, ESL, civics, and entrepreneurial training in our case. So the challenge is you have to figure out how you're allocating salaries of teachers. So you're pulling a bunch of students from various ESL teachers' classes who are providing a significant portion of the full package. So you have to figure out an allocation formula to prorate their salaries according to the number of students that are in their classes that enroll in the actual training program. And of course, you can pay, in this case, Francesca and her colleague Claudia, who primarily teach the entrepreneurial program directly with these funds. So that's how we're trying to do that.
Okay, so all your funding is coming from, all of your funding is coming from the IELCE funding from Department of Ed, right? That's what you said.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's what I said.
How about? Yep. Okay. I see the challenge. I get it. I think other people are probably nodding. Maureen, how about for you?
Yeah, probably a large number of our clients, we send them through the career centers to get funded. So in the past that was WIA, and now we're looking at WIOA. But that's not enough funding to keep the program going. It is a very expensive program because we're partnering with a Boston Public School, and we have those salaries, those teacher salaries that we have to pay over there as well. So it becomes an expensive program for us to run. And we have, development is always looking for new funding sources. We write a lot of grants. I mean, we get some grant funding from other cities that surround Boston, and from the city of Boston and programs that they have, and from private foundations. It's tough. It's tough. We're looking at a time right now where our funding is decreasing.
And Tyler, did you want to add anything about funding from your perspective?
It sounds like a lot of our situation is similar to Maureen's. We don't have a development department, so we put a lot of time and effort ourselves into writing grants. It hasn't been easy. It's been hard, but we do have some smaller foundation grants, larger grants through workforce boards, our State Department of Labor, TANF, and we've gotten the most support for our funding applications when we have existing strong buy-in from employers. So that seems to be, one of the big things, at least around here. If you have employer buy-in, I think employer participation, then you have a far better chance of getting funded for programs like this.
Okay, so I have other questions in my mind, but I think I want to open this up for people who are on the webinar to be able to chime in. So Ellen, do you want to line up a couple of questions for us?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up questions that can easily be raised across all three presentations. So here is one. The person says these programs are expected to be accelerated, yet English language acquisition cannot necessarily be accelerated. How do each of the presenters address this challenge? Who would like to start?
This is Maureen from Boston. I guess I can start. I agree that ESL language acquisition cannot be easily accelerated. For our particular program, like I said, we do test. We are looking for a particular level of English for them to enter the program. There is a lot of vocabulary for them to learn, not just technical vocabulary, but just like very simple, very ordinary household vocabulary. Like a clog or splice, that they really got to get up to speed on, listening to other people talking. Also, one of the things that we look at in our program is we're thinking about facilities maintenance technicians as somebody who really needs to be able to listen and understand directions, either over, even over a telephone. Or just verbally, and be able to just communicate what they've done in a room or on a work order. And so, we do a little bit of writing because we also anticipate that they're going to be reading work orders and having to respond to work orders. But our major focus is on their listening and speaking skills, and not as much focus on their writing and reading skills.
Okay, is John or Francesca or Tyler have something to add? Thank you, Maureen.
This is
Tyler.
I
think I would just add that jargon is jargon. Accelerated is they use every term in the book in the way they describe how they want us to do these things. But I do think that the instruction is accelerated in our example, primarily by the enrichment of their digital literacy skills and their communication and presentation skills. It's obviously vital that they be able to communicate with customers, and I think there is something in the entrepreneurship model that sort of heightens awareness of, or maybe urgency about being able to communicate clearly, and there is a ramp up of digital literacy skills that I've seen. That's all I have to say.
Oh, thanks, John. And Tyler, did I hear you you're also interested in sharing your response?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add that you know, that because the program is so closely aligned with is completely aligned to the students' employment goals, I think that it actually does accelerate their learning in the program because they're so engaged in what they're learning about, and they're immersed in it and using it all of the time.
Okay, thank you. Andy, do you want to pose your questions, or do you want me to continue to pull some out from the chat box? I think
Andy, you're muted.
You're muted, yeah.
Oh, so sorry. I said I think you should go ahead. Like, if you
get
a chance to ask questions. Sorry.
Okay, another. Each time after each of the presentations, or sometimes during it, there's clearly a lot of interest in wanting to be able to see your curriculum. Some of it was on a specific aspect to it, and some was maybe about the broader curriculum within the program. So one is that people are asking how to access it, so that's a simpler question to answer. And the other is that relate to around the development of curriculum. How do you develop it? Is it in partnership with your employers? How is it done in a way that is an integrated process? And Tyler, since you went last before, would you mind going first this time and responding? One, to see about how to access your curriculum, which we can certainly help support that, but I just want to, the big thing was whether or not it's available, and also about the development of your content and your process.
Sure. So with regard to accessing the curriculum, I'd be happy to share what we have. The basic skills and English language acquisition components are, we don't have a specific curriculum for that. It's all very integrated. Our ESL instructor, our basic skills instructor, goes into the classes and she's using the materials that the students are using during the training to really help them develop vocabulary, speaking, listening, writing, reading around the materials that they're using in class. So if they're using a textbook, like our culinary class uses the Culinary Institute of America's Professional Chef textbook, and so she'll use that to create her lessons, as well as materials that are related to any specific certifications they're doing. If they're doing the ServSafe certificate or the First Aid CPR, she will use those preparation materials to develop lessons that will help them improve their ability to process that information, and again, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And we're constantly modifying our curriculum to address feedback from our employers. We have done a lot of research in developing our curricula, you know, talking with local colleges and looking at what other programs are using and if it's successful. But I think that seeing how our students do with their internship and getting feedback from our employer partners is a huge piece in developing our curriculum and keeping it, you know, continuously improving it.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming just by what I know about your program, that it's a very formative, you know, process. Yeah. And Maureen, John, do you have anything that you'd like to add in terms of your own curriculum process, and also is it your aspects of your curriculum or all of your curriculum available to participants?
I'll go ahead. Yes, our curriculum, as it is at this point, is definitely available. We can share it with you folks. I'm going to kind of agree with Ellen. Everything that we're doing is entirely formative. We're building this as we go. Francesca does the primary curriculum and instruction development. But she relies heavily on those partners that we talked about, SCORE and Randolph Books. They bring a lot. And that's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, and Maureen? Thank you.
Yeah, we have a basic curriculum guideline that I'd be happy to share with people. A lot of the curriculum initially, for the hands-on classes in the vocational technical school, that was developed with the school, also developed with employer partners. What we were interested to know what they found relevant, what they have their technicians doing on site, and that continues to get modified over the years. There's new technologies that come in, and so in order to fit that in, what can we look at that maybe people are not using so much anymore that we can take out? The English curriculum and the math curriculum, that's really kind of an ongoing thing. There are some basics, but that is so contextualized with the classes, almost fresh for every class. The English and the math really depends on what they're doing in the class that day or what they did in that class yesterday.
Thank you. As I listened to all three of your responses, I'm so struck by how fortunate those of us who are newer in this endeavor are to have your kind of experience, and you're the pioneers amongst the pioneers, so appreciate that. And Andy, I have a feeling it's time for your questions.
Well, I only had one that
okay.
I had in mind, which was related to what you're talking about. That a lot of people are probably interested in this webinar because they don't have an IET program in place, and they're trying to figure out what you need to take into consideration in order to start one up. And so I'm wondering if you experienced folks have any words of advice or lessons learned that you would pass along to programs that are trying to start up an IET program?
I'll try to give that a shot. The most important thing, I think, is to know your community, know your context, and know your population, your student population, and and what's going on in the various occupational sectors. And then the second thing is to really understand the law and the regulations that are coming from whatever state agency is handling your WIOA grant, because you kind of just have to make the two match up somehow. We've tried some other IETs in a more conventional way, and they've been okay. They've some in office occupations and primarily truck driving as well. But we find we get very, very small numbers of students as compared to the interest that this entrepreneurial class has generated. And I think in part that might be just part of the immigrant tradition. The family business is a big part of our American immigrant tradition. And, from 2007 to 2014, 87% of the new businesses started in this country were started by Latino immigrants. I find that amazing. So we plugged into that. And, I think it's a matter of finding your niche and understanding the law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree that finding your niche is really important. This is Tyla. I think that for us, it was just we have a big healthcare industry in our state. We have a huge culinary scene, and just finding those jobs that are available in your state's economy or in your area's economy that align with your students' needs. That's a challenge in itself, but and then figuring out which of those you might be able to incorporate into your programming is even more difficult. So, but that's what we did.
Yeah, I agree with both Tyler and John, and I think the other thing is that you know, in all three of these programs being presented today, it looks to me like a large part of the staff are professionals in their own area, and I think that makes a really big difference in trying to, you know, provide IET. And a lot of the employer partners, you know, they are that profession themselves, and having them involved in curriculum and working in the program in whatever way that they do, either through mock interviews or through internships, also provides a very big proponent of the program.
So I have some questions that are connected to what we're talking about now, and so if it's okay, I'd like to pose it. Has everyone had, I think everyone's had a chance to share, right? So my question has to do, there's a lot of questions that have to do about appreciating that this is a formative process of what you've been describing in terms of your program development. We still have ways that we need to be accountable. We also want to make sure that we're successful. So how do you measure the success and outcomes of your work? Personally, you know, within your organization, and also if there's any external ways that you need to make sure that you do that, we'd love to hear it. But it's also coming from to make sure that you know. How do you know that that is being successful and the outcomes are what you need them to be?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to jump in and say something before they answer, because I thought we've seen some amazing outcomes in terms of employment rates, wage increases. I think we saw some of those outcomes really clearly, and I'm wondering if the questions are also geared toward in areas that are more curricular, like how do you know that people are learning?
Yes, they are. They all are much more in terms of those that are more curricular. And some have to do with the specifics of the curriculum. So, for example, how do you measure the success now come out the business basics curriculum? You know, how do you measure the success? But I think it's also, I think it was the question that I was thinking of. So there's that, Andy, and it's also the question about, so how do you personally, when you're doing this work, know when you need, so you know that the outcomes are there, but how do you know what you need when you need to maybe strengthen an area or not, based on your own program's mission?
I could address that. I mean, because one of the things that we're seeing now, you know, we get feedback from the employers. So some students, you know, are fantastic, and in other students they have their weaknesses. And one of the things that we're seeing happen with some of our students right now, you know, is a facilities maintenance training program. You know, a lot of the larger buildings are now really being monitored 24 hours by computer, and you know, and it's the computer that alerts the maintenance crew, you know, what the problem may be, where the problem can be found. And that's an area of weakness for some of our students, not all of our students, is their computer literacy skills and using mobile devices. You know, they all, you know, work on a computer really well, you know, for the things that they like to do in their lives, but to get them the training for, you know, what they would need to be doing on the job in the computer has been something that hasn't been really easy for us.
And it sounds like you're in constant dialogue with the employers and with the students and with the teachers to be able to see what gaps there may be that you need to address.
Yeah, we really are. You know, we have a job developer, and you know, because our program runs in modules, and they have a couple of entry dates that they can start, so they're exiting the program like every 8 weeks. So every 8 weeks, our job developer is talking with employer partners and setting up internships. You know, the teachers, the basic skills instructor goes to the shop and is working with the vocational teachers there. We have an energy efficiency teacher who does the classes on our facility here. So we're really coming together all the time.
Yeah, and I think part of what sometimes can get, and what you're sharing just kind of helps me prove my point, I think, is that often with formative evaluations, it's not seen that it may not be always seen as having constant input in terms of information and indicators for assessment. And what you've just described shows that it's constant, it's continual, and then you need to be able to make the adjustments when necessary. Tyler, or the folks from Texas, would you like to share anything?
Sure. So, you know, our classes have a lot of hands-on learning and a lot of performance-based assessment throughout the classes. They do, they demonstrate their skills, they practice interviews. The teachers and the support staff really treat the participants as if the training is their job, so they give them the feedback if people are not coming on to class on time, if they're not acting the way they should on the job. You know, we're constantly giving them that feedback, and also taking it, you know, taking that in and determining what they need to learn. We get evaluations from the internship providers, so you know, we get a lot of feedback from them as well.
Thanks, and I am going to, before I get any more into the questions, because I love question posing, I'm going to pass this back to Andy because we want to make sure that we have time to adequately close the session. But thank you, and please know that all of the questions that are posed will be responded to, and that includes the ones around access to the curriculum. But we'll be doing that separately outside of the session. Okay, Andy.
Okay, so thanks. Thank you all. That was interesting conversation to listen to. Before we head toward our closing resources, I want to highlight some decision points that we are seeing in these three programs, as well as the three programs that we featured in our first webinar on IET in rural settings. And the ones that jumped out most clearly for us were these. So starting points, you know, programs, IET programs are driven by different drivers, I guess I'd say. The impetus for developing an IET program may come from the sense that you see underutilized skills and experience in your immigrant students, and you want to find a career pathway that will absorb all that talent and that experience. Or it might work the other way. It might be that you are in contact with employers. I think I heard that in Maureen talking about being in touch with employers who are expressing a need for a skilled-up workforce, and that is the driver, that you then put something in place that's responsive to that. Or you might be nudged by WIOA to start figuring out where the common needs are between employers and workers in your community by engaging in cross-agency conversations. So how the program gets underway will vary. And on partners, you know, as you heard today, there was a range in the kind of partners that were engaged, the number of partnerships supporting a program, and the ways that the partners work together. So there were just varieties in how much collaboration was needed, when, and by whom. And those are all decisions that will have to get made in figuring out how to build a strong partnership. And then there's program design. Here are just some of the program elements that need to be figured out. There were others, I'm sure, that you heard today as you listened. I was noting the whole idea of how you orient students and screen them and prepare them for this process as well. But many decision points around your program design. And then finally, funding. And especially since it doesn't look like federal adult education funding is likely to get a boost anytime soon, these models require diversified funding, and some provided as in-kind contributions of resources and services, and some as money to pay for staff. And the range of funders that were mentioned here today demonstrates that this is also a localized challenge, that adult ed programs need to tap not only federal WIOA funding streams, but other federal, state, and local government funds, as well as foundations. And I think you'll find some help in some of the resources being developed by organizations such as the National Skills Coalition, the Center for Law and Social Policy by ACCA, and others. Here are a few that we have found useful. We'll put these links in the chat box in case you want to copy them, but they'll also be sent along to you, along to you when we send you a recording of the link to the webinar. And the fourth link down here is actually a survey that's aiming to gather examples for a database of IET models that I think all of us will appreciate having access to. There's also a compilation of curriculum resources that David Rosen collected, which I didn't have a link for, but that I will add to the resource list that we send out. And also, it sounds like our presenters are offering to share some of the curriculum resources that they've developed. We'd be happy to facilitate that as well. So with that, let me turn this back to Ellen.
Thanks, Sandy. So we also want to just highlight some of our own Will Education resources, and for this we're focusing on our online courses. And we have the next round of courses are starting in February, and you can, it's on contextualized instruction, college readiness, navigating pathways to opportunity. There was a lot of questions today around teaching and team teaching, and even if it wasn't said team teaching, I was reading between the lines. So there's also a non-facilitated course that's always available. It's available right now. You can access, and there's the link that you can use to access those courses. And I think, yes, I should say thank you, but I was ready for the. I get so used to looking at the slide in my. Yeah, I'm looking at my between the slides and the chat box. So most important thing is we want to thank you, and we want to thank you for participating in your questions, because your questions really help inform our work, and our work is to best find ways to support what you do, because it's very important. We also want you to, if you could please, because it helps us make sure that that each of our webinars get better and better, and also it helps us understand where the kind of issues are that we could best provide support. So if you could fill out the webinar evaluation survey, you can see there's a link in the chat box that Ben just shared to all of us, and we will also be sending the link out in the email that'll go to you, immediately after the webinar today. And as you probably know from your own experience, the sooner you do it, it's done, and then it doesn't get lost with the other tasks that you need to do. And we hope to see you all, and also encourage others to join us for the next webinar on January 26th at 2. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you, presenters.
And it's a wrap.
Oh,